All the evidence points to one thing, but the witnesses say something else. And that's when the story becomes even more dangerous. The victim was in the wrong place, at the wrong...
Hey everyone, welcome back to True Crime Daily. I hope you're all doing well. Today's case is one that left investigators speechless. Twists, secrets, and a truth no one saw coming. Let's dive right in.
It was late one night, into the morning hours, at about 3 a.m., when some people driving their cars were horrified to see, lying in the middle of the road, the body of a girl. Fortunately, no car had run over it. A dead girl was clothed with only a single piece and jeans that were totally torn. A dead woman. They did not notice at first that they were at a crime scene. They reported it to the police, and the gendarmerie and judicial security personnel were sent there. They affirmed that a crime had been committed, and the public prosecutor, the heads of investigation teams, along with the scientific laboratory, moved to the crime scene. Let us tell you in detail what happened at the scene, just as it occurred. Crime scene and initial investigations. First, the road was asphalt. The forensic team came in to delimit the crime scene. At first, some people thought that she might have been overrun by a car, but whoever approached her noticed the wounds on her. The victim had bruises and stab wounds all over her body. An initial impression of the forensic team, thus, was that she had been murdered and then thrown from a car. The crime scene, the road, was solid asphalt and did not retain clear tire marks or fingerprints. Therefore, at the spot where she was found, there were no indicative traces. They went back to examine the victim. She was a girl in the prime of her life, in her 20s. She looked frail, with a pale face and prominent bones. She was wearing nice clothes, a type of women's blouse with long jeans. Her hair was long and brown. No identification was found on her. They took her fingerprints and began searching for her identity. The body was transferred to the morgue. Investigators questioned those who found her body. They were ordinary people on their way who were shocked by the body and called it in. They sent the fingerprints into the database, hoping to identify her, but the search came back nothing. Nobody called to report a missing daughter, sister, or wife. They checked lists of missing persons and came up with nothing. They worked with the medical examiner to get clear photos of her, cleaning her face and arranging her hair so that someone might recognize her. Indeed, they took photos. What did the medical examiner say? He said directly, "This girl is one of the night girls," meaning he assumed she worked in prostitution. The medical examiner, who could provide useful information, said the victim was alive when thrown from the car before she died, meaning she was killed and then thrown. He ruled out that she was hit by a car after her death. The victim was full of wounds, knife stabs to the stomach, numerous bruises, and a strong blow to the head from a car engine or a hard object is what ended her life. The skull was fractured. In short, the criminal or criminals showed her no mercy. The medical examiner estimated that she had been killed approximately 1 to 3 hours before being thrown out. Judging by the complete pallor of her face, it had turned yellow. Investigations started to focus on night taxi drivers and nightlife places under the assumption that she might have been one of the night girls. The search continued for 3 days without any significant developments.
After 3 days, a woman came forward to report. She said, "I am a married woman with 2 sons, and I live with my husband and my daughter. My daughter is actually my sister's daughter, my niece. My sister passed away years ago, and her daughter lived with me because my children were older and she was young. When my daughter got married, she left my sister's daughter, this girl, who lived with me to care for her, promising she would take her later, but she never returned. The girl stayed with me and I cared for her. The woman says, my daughter, that is, my niece, is named Grace. She is 24 years old. She was brought up by me. She doesn't have a national ID card. She never attended school or any kind of training. She has no identification papers. Later on, I went to my sister, Grace's mother, to ask her that she should take her daughter. She told me, okay, I'll come and get her, but she never came back. I spoke to my husband, and he agreed we should bring her up in our home, and we raised her. She grew up and learned the truth, that her mother gave birth to her out of wedlock and left her and ran away. The woman says, the girl fell into depression from the age of 16. At home, we prepared a private room for her, with her own bed and personal belongings. She never left the house. She didn't come or go. But in the last 3 days, she disappeared. On the first day, we searched the house for her and did not find her. In the evening, she did not call. My husband was scolding me and asking, where could she have run off to? What happened? Then we heard the news about finding a murdered girl's body, so we came to check. They showed her the photos, and she recognized her straight away. She was shocked and collapsed. The strange thing in this story here, a big contradiction. The medical examiner says she's one of the night girls, while the woman, the aunt/guardian, says she never leaves the house and I watch over her. She lived in the house for 16 whole years.
Investigators went with the woman to her home. They live in a large working-class neighborhood in an alley off a main street. The house has 2 doors. One door leads to the ground floor apartment where the 2 sons, Ethan and Isaiah, live and work, and another door leads to the upper floor where the woman, her husband, and the girl, Grace, live. They said to the woman, you say she never goes out. How is that? They checked the door locks. The upper door was locked with an ordinary lock, which could be opened from inside and out. They entered Grace's room. It was an ordinary, tidy room with a bed and closets. The woman said, all her things are here. She washes her hair and does everything herself. We don't interfere. But investigators noticed something strange. A clothesline stretched across the middle of the room. They asked, you hang clothes in the middle of the room? The woman said, yes, sometimes. They asked, why not on the roof? She said, I don't know. This raised the suspicions of the investigators. They opened her closet.
In her closet, they found 2 types of clothing, normal house clothes and other, different clothes. They showed the woman a chocolate brown dress, a white blouse, and red sandals tied with red laces all the way up to the knee. The woman said, these clothes aren't hers. I've never seen her wear them before. This was the first physical evidence that she had been going out and hiding her clothes. The biggest shock, during the search, they opened a small safe in the room. They found an enormous amount of money inside, about $600,000. This is a huge sum for this simple family whose sons work modest jobs. The woman and her husband were surprised and denied knowing this money. And more than that, they also found a large quantity of gold in the safe. Necklaces, bracelets, rings, earrings, all pure gold. They were bought from well-known stores, and the receipts had the buyer's name written on them, Grace Anderson. Here, the family surname appeared, Anderson. The woman confirmed that their family name is actually Anderson. This discrepancy in the surname added mystery, so they gathered the gold and money. The big question, where did a secluded girl with no income get all this money and gold? The investigation immediately turned to who is the man giving her all this? Field investigation and witnesses. Also, during the search, they found a box of birth control pills with 1 pill missing. This too served as evidence that she had a life outside of the home. The medical examiner was wrong in the diagnosis of her as a night girl, but he was right when he said she was sexually active. Field investigations started in the neighborhood. Neighbors and girls were asked. All said, "We know she lives here, but we've never seen her leave." Consensus that she was isolated. But one girl, Haley Miller, said to have been a friend of Grace's, and she had taken a selfie with her and the third friend, Sophia. This girl, Haley, is married and lives in another neighborhood. They brought Haley Miller in. She brought the photo along with her. She identified herself, Grace, and Sophia in the photo. She said, "Grace used to go out with us sometimes, but she was secretive. We didn't know all her secrets." Through Haley, they learned Grace had another friend named Sophia. They brought her in. Sophia was another girl. From the examination of the gold and receipts, investigators traced the store that sold the gold. The store owner recognized the girl Grace. He said she used to come with an older man, a financially well-off man. He was the one paying and buying the gold for her. He didn't know the man's name or how to contact him. He said she visited the store several times.
A very important witness came forward, a young man from the neighborhood by the name of Derek Miller. He testified that on the night of, at approximately 12:30 a.m., he was walking back home on the main street. He saw 3 girls emerge from the alley that leads to Grace's home. He described them for the investigators. One tall and slim, one short and curvy, and the third was wearing the chocolate brown dress, the white blouse, and the red sandals tied with red laces, the exact clothes found in her closet. He said he saw a white Peugeot parked, model 306 or 207/307. The 3 girls got in and it drove off. At first, he did not pay much attention until he heard about the crime and decided to make his statement. His description of the clothes tallied with that found by investigators. Now the picture became clear. Grace had been secretly going out with her friends, Haley and Sophia. She was meeting an older, well-off man who gave her money and gold. On that fateful night, she went out with them and got into a white Peugeot. They analyzed the phone call list later and found she had 2 secret phone numbers. They were in intensive contact with 2 numbers, one for the young man Oscar and one for the older man. Her 2 friends, Haley and Sophia, admitted that they used to go out with Grace. They confirmed that Grace used to meet this older man. He would pick her up in his car, sometimes a Peugeot, take her for rides, then bring her back. He gave her money, but they didn't know his identity.
The inquiry had reached a dead end. Who was the owner of the Peugeot? Who was the older man? Who was Oscar? The major breakthrough: the patient in intensive care. Perseverance with the telephone number of the older man revealed that it belonged to an elderly, ailing man who was in critical condition in a hospital clinic. They went to see him. The man was bedridden, his wife and son present. When they asked him about Grace, the man broke down and confessed, "She is my daughter," and he began to cry bitterly. This was a huge shock for his wife. She hadn't known of this daughter. His health worsened, and he fell into a coma. This man is Alfred Anderson, a rich man, a poor family upbringing, business in the fabric trade, successful and very well off. The full story, a tragic secret. Alfred shared the story. He and his wife, Amelia, had no children for many years. They decided on adopting a child. They adopted a boy named Oscar, now 26, 27 years old. They brought him up like their biological son. However, Alfred's brothers, Michael and Alexander, and their sons knew that Oscar was an adopted son, so they resented him since Oscar would be the inheritor of his uncle's wealth instead of them. Before Alfred made his fortune, He had an affair with another woman. She bore him a daughter, Grace. This woman ran away, leaving the child with her sister, who became Grace's aunt and raised her. Alfred knew of this daughter, but was afraid of his wife, who sounds strong-willed to say the least, and scandal, so he never officially acknowledged her. Later in life, as he aged and fell ill, he had developed guilty feelings towards his daughter, Grace. He began seeing her in secret, either through intermediaries or by getting in touch with her on her own when she came of age. He gave her huge amounts of money and bought her gold in compensation and as an unofficial bequeathing. He wanted to secure her future once he was dead. He planned to leave her part of his money, but was beside himself with fear of what his brothers and nephews and Oscar, his adopted son, would say.
Unfortunately, the adopted son, Oscar, found out the secret of his sister, Grace, either by monitoring his father or his communications. Oscar contacted Grace and introduced himself to her as her older brother. On the night of the crime, he called and asked her to meet with him. Oscar is the owner of the white Peugeot. On the night of the incident, he called Grace and asked her to come out. She put on her special clothes, which she hid, and went out with her friends, Haley and Sophia, to where he was waiting in his car. He took her for a ride. In the car, he told her that he was her brother. He was the adopted son of her father. Then he brutally attacked her. He struck her on the head, stabbed her in the stomach with a knife, and while she was dying, he pulled her out of the car and left her on a deserted roadside. Then he ran away. Grace had dropped her phone at the crime scene. Oscar had not noticed that. This was the phone that eventually led the investigation to the communication network. Conclusion and punishment. After putting the pieces together of the evidence, Oscar had communicated to her, her friends testimoned, Derek Miller's testimony about the Peugeot, her father's confession. Investigators cornered Oscar and he confessed to his crime. His motive was that he stood to lose his inheritance if his father legally acknowledged her as his daughter.
The impact. Oscar was sentenced to life in prison or harsh punishment because he killed his sister. Alfred, the father, his health deteriorated in the hospital, and he died of grief and remorse. Grace, she lived a miserable, lonely life and died tragically, being an innocent victim born from an extramarital affair, having to pay for others' conflicts over money and inheritance. She came into the world and never got her due. The aunt and her husband lived in shock and grief after finding out that the girl they raised was living a secret and dangerous life right under their noses.
This is a combination of crime and social drama. The lesson lies in the mistakes of the parents, the mistake of the father, who did not recognize his daughter and take responsibility for her from the very beginning, and his fear of his wife and society. Then there is the mistake of the mother, or aunt, in thinking that love and protection based on isolation and hiding were enough, without giving this girl her identity, education, and healthy integration into society. The fatal mistakes of adults result in the emergence of innocent victims and give rise to criminals. That's our story for tonight, Episode 2. Thank you for following along. May you all be safe and at peace. I send my greetings to you all. We'll be back tomorrow with a new story, a new mystery. Good night.